Well, it is a pleasure to be here with you, Darren, today. It's been a time since we caught up last, so it's really
Absolutely.
nice to
It's been a
speak with
while.
you.
It has,
And
yeah.
you've worn a couple of different hats in the time that we've known one another. But you're here in your capacity as the COO of Britus Education, aren't you, today? Tell us. You introduce yourself. You do that. That's best.
Sure. Yeah. So look, I'm Darren Coxon. I'm Chief Operating Officer for Britus Education. We are a school operating company based in Bahrain. We have 9 schools in the group. Currently, 2 in Bahrain, 1 in Dubai, 5 in Riyadh in KSA, and 1 here in Tunis, where I'm currently based. They're all international schools, majority are K-12 schools. We have a mixture of curricula. We have IB, US, UK, local, Egyptian, a wide variety of curricula. Most of our schools are, I would say, in the mid-fee bracket. So most of them are catering more towards sort of the local demographic. We're looking to grow. We've got a focus on MENA, Middle East and North Africa, but we're really keen to kind of keep expanding and just see what happens next. It's a really exciting time, actually, international education. Really exciting.
Oh, there's a lot, and it's interesting hearing you talk about KSA, because there's a lot going on there, certainly. And you yourself have got a solid background in school education or leadership as well, haven't you?
Yeah, gosh, I've been in this job for a long time. So this is actually my 25th year in education.
Yeah, see, you look remarkably well on it, Darren.
Thanks. And so I've been almost 10 years in group management, 2015, 2014, 2015. First started working at Brighton College. So I was Brighton College's international director. I've worked for a charitable trust. I worked as a part of the founding team of a schools group prior to, which is how we got to know each other.
Yes, some of the early stages of it,
back in right really early stages when we were just looking to fundraise. I've been in pretty well every job. I've been ahead. I've been in pretty well every job, other than I don't think I've been in a chef in a school. I think that's about the only thing I've not. But house parents in a boarding school in Switzerland, or literally everything. You've been everywhere.
And one of the reasons, well, the main reason really for us to have this conversation today is about your interest in AI, isn't it? So, tell us, why is that an interest for you?
Well, look, I've always, number one, I'm a bit of a geek. So I find new technology inherently interesting. Aside from education, aside from its use case, I just find shiny new toys and things really interesting. So that's number one. I worked, gosh, this was 12, 13 years ago now, when I was deputy head in a school. We were the first state sixth form to bring iPads into the school. So we were the first one to go up to one. And then as a result, I did a lot with Apple, and I got into education technology fairly early, not really early, but fairly early. And then really and I've been interested in the text to image AIs, which we can talk about later, for probably about a year. Some of the very early stages when they were really, frankly, quite rubbish.
Right.
But it was only really since late November, like the whole of the rest of the world were like, well, a lot of the world were like, oh, ChatGPT, what's all this about?
Yes.
And so since then, really, since sort of late November, December, I've been really focusing a lot of my time and attention, personally and professionally, on AI. And the reason is quite straightforward.
Yeah.
When you think about the way in which we teach and the way in which students learn, we've never really had any solution which could genuinely impact on teaching and learning, that can have a genuinely positive impact on teaching and learning. But the way in which AIs can really learn and understand and get to know individuals, not just groups, but individuals, this is, for me, is really, really key. And we can talk a little bit more about kind of the way I see things are going to go in the future.
Yeah, that'd be
essentially what we have is we have the opportunity for the first time in anyone's generation in education. And we can talk right the way back to the 18th century, really, when we first started education as it is. And it's very similar now than it was 300 years ago. Hasn't changed.
As you see repeatedly, yes. People,
hasn't changed much. And, we've brought
common
the smartphone. We brought in virtual learning environments. We brought in iPads. We brought in Chromebooks. We brought in all of this And actually, the end result, which is a teacher in the classroom giving a lesson to many, many children in the class, hasn't really changed at all. It's pretty well identical from what it was hundreds of years ago. But now, for the very, very first time, we can actually use, we talk about a paradigm shift, and it's just been such a hackneyed, overblown term, but we can genuinely say it feels like right now in 2023, we are on the verge of a paradigm shift. We are on the verge of moving from one model of teaching and learning to another. And we're just at the beginning, literally. None of us have a clue what really that means.
Yes.
Okay. I'm certainly not going to say to you, I've got a crystal ball. I know exactly what's going to happen in the future.
I was going to ask you for your crystal ball.
I'll give you,
not yet.
I'll give you my thoughts as to what I think will happen, but I might be completely and totally wrong, because that often does happen. I mean, I genuinely thought back in 2011 when we went one-to-one iPads, this is the future. And I've got nothing against. I use Apple. I'm an Apple fanboy. I love Apple to bits. So it's nothing about the product, but it never really transformed what we did. And it certainly didn't transform outcomes, and lots of parts of the world can't afford expensive kits. So it never really had the transformational effect that I thought it would. But I think AI will, and it's because that it can learn about an individual. And that's the difference, you see. The difference here is that what an AI can do is it can learn about the person. And it will continue to learn about people. And because the whole point of education is about the transference of knowledge, skills, understanding from one head to another, or from one head to many heads, education in itself, you can't learn in a vacuum. You need to learn from someone or something.
And you co-create as well, don't you?
Exactly
Between
right,
people,
exactly
because
right.
people, you have two people, even a teacher will learn from a student as well. So, but that needs people, and those unique people. Yes, yeah.
And you've got that, and we can talk a bit about these large language models. Like, I use ChatGPT just as an example because they've got first mover advantage. Google Bard is being released, Bing Chat there'll be others. There are 4 or 5 other AIs that are just about to be released. So we'll probably talk more about ChatGPT than we will about other AIs. Simply
on my list. It's on my list to talk to you about.
It's because the one that everyone's talking about at the moment. So I think that's why I'm so excited, because it's not like I think it's a magic bullet at all. I really don't. I think that it's got just as much potential to cause problems as it does solve problems. I mean, we're already seeing some challenges around the ethics, bias, protection of data, digital identity. There's masses of stuff that is potentially problematic about AI. So it's not all rosy. But if you compare it to the big explosion 2.5, 3 years ago of cryptocurrencies, which I also became very interested in again because I'm a geek, I think the difference here, and interestingly, the CEO of NVIDIA said this. He said there is a genuine use case that can improve humanity with AI that we never really saw with crypto. Right. And so I think we can genuinely speak, as an educator, I can genuinely speak with confidence. And the reason is I know it's happening, so we're already using it in one of our schools. I can genuinely say with confidence that AI has the potential to be a bit of a game changer. But the danger is that it will disrupt things so quickly that we'll all be on the back foot, and we'll all be lost, and teachers won't have a clue what's going on, and schools will think, what are we doing? And there'll be rushed decisions made, and they'll buy solutions which are the wrong solutions, and blah blah blah, because we've seen it before. So I think the reason I want to talk to you and anyone who listen is because unless we start this debate right now, literally right now, not even in a month or 2 months' time, because every single day new AIs are being released and new features are being released. Unless we do this right now, we in education are going to be completely on the back foot. And actually, what we'll find, if we think about what might happen in the future, but not the far future, very, very soon, is that kids will look at ChatGPT and they'll start planning out their own pathways, and they'll do their own assessments, and they'll suddenly think, why am I in the classroom? What's the reason for me being in the classroom? I can literally get, particularly for kids from maybe disadvantaged backgrounds, kids who don't have access to good quality teachers, they might think, hang on, what's the what's the purpose
value?
of being in school?
Yeah.
What's the value? And actually, we could find behaviour deteriorating quite fast.
Yes.
We've
Yes.
already seen it post-COVID with the advent of social media, with the advent and the explosion in digital devices. We've already seen a slide in behaviour, and many schools will say that, you know, kids are more distracted. It's a problem getting, you know, kids away from their smartphones. We've seen this already. I actually think the potential for this to go quite quickly downhill is quite real, unless we harness these schools now, in which case the curve could go in the opposite direction. So it genuinely feels like we need to be really careful here. We don't ignore it, don't just dismiss it as being some fad, because the kids won't see it like that.
No.
I got my 16-year-old daughter. She's doing a history GCSE at the moment, and she's really struggling to get resources. And I said, right, I'm going to give you 3 or 4 prompts to put into ChatGPT. She did that, and it wrote her a revision guide, which covered everything that she needed to get a grade 9, everything. And it was better than any of the other resources that she'd accessed through Amazon or whatever, and certainly better than anything her teacher. And she's super clever. And she said, I'm not sure what the point of my teacher is, because you've given me 3 or 4 prompts to put in chat, and it's given me more than I've had in 2 years. And she's not alone. There are kids all over the world who are asking exactly the same questions, and they're not getting the answers they need. So we just have to be super fast as to how we address this.
So how are you using it in school? You said that you're using it already in school. How are you doing that?
Yeah. So look, we've done some initial training with the teachers. I've done some initial sort of.
Is this on ChatGPT?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
But ChatGPT mainly. So so I've done some staff training. So how are the staff using it? Well, first and foremost, they're using it to save themselves time.
Right.
And I'm doing it as well. I'm saving myself time. I'm using it to draft policies, procedures, job descriptions, and it's doing it all better than I frankly do myself. So that's the first thing. Teachers are using it to do lesson planning, schemes of work. They're using it to do minutely differentiated resources, so they can produce a worksheet which is specific to a grade 5 or a grade 7 or whatever, and they can actually do it really, really bespoke, really granular. Does it really, really well. So that's the first thing that they're doing. Some of the teachers now are just starting tentatively to bring it into lessons, to do some work around showing them how to use it in an English lesson or a maths lesson, how they can put in prompts. But because it's literally only a few months old, nothing's been formalized yet. You know, we've not done a formal schemes of work yet.
Yes.
We're creating what I'm calling literacy for AI program. So we're creating it at the moment.
You're exploring in this.
Exploring, yeah. We're just because, and you know, back to one of the points you made at the beginning that I completely agree with. It has to be a two-way thing.
Yes.
You know. And the beauty right now with AI is that the kids know more than we do generally. Most students will know a lot more than we do. And so actually we can co-create some of this stuff together, and they can give us ideas and suggestions as well. So the other thing that we've done was we set up Standard, just a working group, you know, staff, we've started to meet on a weekly basis where they're just sharing ideas. We're planning to do an AI week after when the exams finish at the beginning of June. So we'll literally collapse the curriculum across the entire school, and we'll get kids working on an AI focused project where they can properly learn how to integrate text to text AI, text to image AIs, text to music. They can create graphic novels. They can do all sorts of kind of funky things with combining these various different artificial intelligences together. So that's the plan for some sort of the beginning of June.
So are there any downsides? I mean, this is an exploration you're describing here about there are people going out and thinking about how to integrate it. And obviously you've got to get to a point where people can actually use it. Yeah. And it doesn't become just like a pencil that isn't sharpened. And because you're not sharpening, you're not knowing how to use it totally. Properly. So that's there's that. Yes.
And you're absolutely right. That point is probably the most relevant to us as educators, because the first thing anyone will say to me is when I talk about AI, they'll say, yeah, but it's just going to make people stupid and lazy, and they're just going to cheat, and they're just going to get ChatGPT to write their essays for them and all that kind of thing. And yeah, absolutely right. Unless you know about AI and you understand how it works, that's exactly what will happen. Because of course, and there are kids all over the world right now who are getting who are having their essays written using ChatGPT. And they're getting really good marks because the teachers have no idea. I was at a university speaking to the dean of a local university that we're going to do some partnership work with. We're just going to look to see if we can do some research work together over the next few months, because they've got academics who are looking specifically at this. And I'm like, well, let's partner up and let's see if we can do some work together. They've said, oh yeah, no, we've already had students who have submitted work with ChatGPT. You can tell very, very quickly that In fact, I even called out on LinkedIn. I called out some guy had written a LinkedIn article and that was doing the rounds.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is amazing, and and I just put this was written by ChatGPT. So even educators and even professionals are actually producing stuff, and they're putting out as themselves as ChatGPT. So that's that's already happening. So we have to make sure that the kids understand. And I've talked to the kids here in the school in Tunis that I'm currently working at a school in Tunis, kind of longish term. So which is quite helpful for me.
Opportunity.
Yeah, it's good because I can test all of this stuff on a fairly small school, and we can work together to develop this rather than me working with lots of different schools. So we'd already discussed with the students that we know if they use ChatGPT to write their essays, because we know because we know their style.
You know them too, don't you?
In a few weeks, you know exactly what their strengths and what their weaknesses are, and if they start passing chat, but also ChatGPT has a very particular style. It's really. Once you've read a few pieces of work from that, from the spat out by Chat, you just know that it is. Even to the point where every paragraph is pretty well the identical structure. Or literally as 5 sentences: topic opener, development, problem, solution, conclude. And it literally does every single one the same. So we will know really soon whether a student has or hasn't used it. There is nothing wrong with using ChatGPT. The IB allowing it to cite it as a source. The other examples will follow suit. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with just use it as another source. That's absolutely fine. No problem at all. You're researching by putting in prompts and it's spitting out results, and then you're using those results in your writing, and then you can extend and develop. So do use it. That's fine. Don't pass it off as your own. So the first one is around making people lazy and stupid, and they won't think for themselves. Actually, when it comes to creativity, the potentially opposite can happen. And the reason for that is lots of creative people, and I consider myself one of them, struggle with organization. Okay, we struggle with getting the mess of stuff inside our heads on paper so we can then logically order, and then we can develop our points as a result. The beauty of ChatGPT and these large language models is they're based on rules. Okay, so they actually work in an opposite way to the human mind work. Most, like mine, certainly my human mind, most human minds don't work in that sort of way. I mean, our prefrontal lobes will order, but not in the way that a large language model will order. And so what, as a result, happens is that if we have this massive stuff in our head, we can dump it all into ChatGPT and it will order it for us logically. And I've done this myself. So I wrote the first draft of a 45,000 word book 2 weeks ago. It took me 1 week to write 45,000 words. And I worked with ChatGPT. We actually worked together like a team. It's quite an interesting experience, actually. And what I'm now doing is I'm taking all of that because it was beautifully ordered. I could not have ordered it better. And I'm now just simply rewriting it. I'm just now paragraph by paragraph, and I'm reading it because it's not my style, and I would never write like that. And I'm thinking, I like what we came up with. I'm now going to write it and develop it and explore and bring in more quotes and bring in more research and think about how we tie points together. And so I simply could not have got to this point without the work that I did with ChatGPT 2 weeks ago. It just wouldn't have happened, because what ChatGPT did is it ordered it perfectly for me. Points one after the other, developed each point perfectly, took an initial heading, developed it into subheadings, everything that I would have done myself, but it did it so quickly. It meant I could get onto the creative stuff really fast, it's the barrier I often have to writing is I have lots of ideas. but sometimes I struggle, or maybe I'm too lazy, I'm not sure, to actually take the time to plan it properly. And so I'll start writing, and then I might run out of steam. Now I've got a tool that enables me to take the big jumbled mess in my head, put it logically on out. So now I can think, yep, do you know what? I'm going to do this and this point. I'm going to go one paragraph at a time, because they've already taken the initial work away. So I think that's where for me, it's quite easy to counter the argument that ChatGPT will make us lazy and not creative, because I actually think that's not the case at all. Second point,
if you use it and you're using it just to pass things off as essays, you're not actually learning anything. So you're not gaining anything from it. So it's simply in order to pass a qualification, and it still is. It's not your work, so it is actually cheating. So you're not gaining. I mean, you might get a qualification at the end, but you haven't got any of the learning that comes with it.
Exactly. But look, I think we shouldn't kid ourselves that, you know, if you are wishing to communicate something to another person or a group of people, we are now in the situation where we don't need to do it all ourselves. We can get something else to do for us. So even to the point where, yes, it might make you a bit lazy and stupid in some ways, but you need to learn how to use that to your own advantage, because if you don't, someone else will. If your school isn't doing it, and if your students aren't learning, some other students are, and therefore we are putting our kids at such a huge disadvantage if we go, oh, no, it's morally wrong, and da. Well, sorry, but there'll be other people doing it. I'm not talking about cheating. I'm not talking about plagiarism. I'm just talking about playing the rules of the game. Yeah, the rules are changing. The rules of the game are changing, and we either teach our students how to play with the new changing rules, or we stick with the old rules, and then we immediately put them at a disadvantage. So whether I agree or disagree with the ethics of it, it's completely irrelevant, totally irrelevant, because right now, this is the way the world's going, and we either embrace it or we bury our head in the sands. And as a result, our students will be leaving school and college and university at a significant disadvantage to, I don't know, in China or Russia or USA or Africa, wherever it is, that are thinking, we're taking this really seriously. And I think we often can be a little bit on the back foot, and we cannot be on the back foot with this. We have to make sure that we're not. So that's the first thing. So the second one is around the ethics, around bias.
Yes, and the inherent traits, because it's quite Western focused. I've been very interested to see, or it's very Western focused actually, and it's interesting to see that and where I've been trying to understand where that moral code has come from, because that's really important. Well, I would say it's really important there's a strong moral code.
Yeah, well, look, the reason it is the way it is because the guys who programmed it are white men. So it has, and what happens is it's a bit like the sort of social media echo chamber where we join a Twitter group or whatever, and then we only hear our own voice echo back, and it accelerates. It's like that, but on steroids. So if you've got an AI which is trained on a data set which has inherent bias, because it's simply chosen, you know, men do this, women do this, one nation does this, another nation typically does that. It accelerates that stereotyping to the point where it's, you know, you can literally put in, I mean, I think that it is changing, it is improving. This is even a few months ago, it's different now than it was a few months ago. But I think what has happened is that it kind of consolidates and accelerates that bias, because it's just feeding off itself all the time, because it's a closed loop, because ChatGPT is a closed loop. So it's not connected to the internet at the moment. It's only working fed on the data that it was fed into it up till the end of about 2021. So unlike Bing Chat, which has got ChatGPT in the background, is connected to the internet as a sort of a search engine, ChatGPT at the moment isn't connected to the internet. It will soon, through plugins, connect to the internet, but ChatGPT itself as a large language model is not currently connected to the internet.
I think there are many advantages in it not being connected with the internet, because there's a lot of dangerous stuff out there. So that, I mean, where are the where are the hurdles that it would have to overcome in order to go rogue? I'm not sure, that's not quite the right way of putting it, but that sense of how is it going to be protected, and how are we going to make sure that it doesn't start feeding dangerous ideas to people?
Well, look, I mean, that's the beginning of what they call the singularity, isn't it? Where you basically have an AI which is self-governing, which basically says, well, I don't need to listen to you people because I know better than you do because I have a higher degree of intelligence, and then it accelerates, and once it's out there, it takes over the missile guidance systems and it ends the world.
Sure, I've seen a film like that before.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's called Terminator. It's called Skynet. Skynet was the name of the AI that ended up ending the world in Terminator. And there's lots of talk around that at the moment. Look, I mean, not even Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, can answer that question. So I certainly can't. I mean, I would be foolish to even suggest what I think could happen in the future. The only thing that we can do is that the students that we're teaching at the moment will be those who are going to develop these AIs to the next level. Okay, they're the ones that are going to be inheriting what we currently have. And so I think this is why it's really, really important that we're having debates on exactly what we're talking about here, the ethics around bias, the ethics around digital identity. You know, if I'm training a text to image model on images, well, where are those images coming from? Are the people who have all of the images that have been dumped into Stable Diffusion or DALL-E or any of the other text to image generators? Do they know their images are being used? Because you know, if you have a text to image generator, it has to be trained on data sets, and those sets are actual people. They're out there in the world. So you know, so there's this whole notion of identity, etc., etc. So literally, the only thing that we can do in schools is just, number one, teach the students how to prompt well. Because that's the key. It's
the
how
quality of the question.
Exactly right. And it's the follow-up, and it's because it's not just putting in one prompt, it's putting in a prompt and then it spits out an answer and then another, and it's about how you guide the AI in the right way. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is simply over how do we debate? So we need to be debating with the students about the ethics around it, the things that we're talking about, the things like bias, the things like cheating, the things like protection, digital identities and data protection. We need to be talking to the students and having debates with them and getting their point of view, because kids often have really fascinating things to say, and they're often a lot more conservative than we are. You know, talk to a lot of 15, 16, 17-year-olds, they actually have more. They prefer to see more controls than less controls, possibly because they can see the impact on themselves personally of being raised with social media, you know, the problems with mental health, body image, etc., etc. So actually often what they bring to the table is not, let's just have a free-for-all and whatever. They're like, no, we can really see that there are some potential dangers. So I think that's it, educating in terms of prompting, but then also opening up and having an honest and open debate about ethics.
And where would you like to see it go in the future? I mean, where are the directions that you're interested in?
So look, I think what I would really love to see for the first time is an education system that worked for every single student who was within it. It's just a fiction. It's just a fiction. Absolute fiction. You know, in schools, we do a reasonably good job most of the time with most of the kids. That's what I would say. And again, some schools do amazing. I mean, some teachers are incredible, but a lot aren't. They're just not. I mean, you know,
every child is different.
Yeah, every child is different. Every child comes from their own background with their own problems and their own family issues and with their own style of learning. And we're so complex. We're just so complex. And so what I would love to see is genuine and this is why I'm so passionate about this at the moment, because the reason I entered education is because I just want kids to have good life chances. And there's nothing more. My career's gone in weird, crazy directions, but ultimately I'm a teacher, I'm an educator. I loved being a teacher. I loved that passion, that energy in the classroom where the kids were just on it and you were sparking ideas off each other. I want that for every child across the entire planet. And if you look at all the work that's happening with the World Education Forum, with Education 4.0, if you look at all the work they're doing with their lighthouse schools, all of this stuff is really fascinating, because I think they have an idea as well as to how we can maybe make this happen and make this work. So I think the way I would love to see it, if I was like utopian vision, if you like, paint a picture of like utopia where the singularity doesn't happen and we're not all
Yes.
burnt to cinders
We're
in
not
something
doomed.
like
Yes, that's
nuclear
right.
holocaust, where the machines turn against us. If that doesn't happen,
Yeah.
I'd love to see 2 or 3 things. So I think every single student, every single child should have a mentor, an AI mentor. Okay. Now, this mentor is with them throughout their entire life, not just like a school app. It's literally like a companion, if you like. We have Siri, but it's like a proper guide version of Siri, where you would literally, you might be stuck on a problem and you can just ask, and it wouldn't just tell you the answer, it would teach you, it would take you through the problem. It would say, okay, let's go back to when you did understand and let's work it through. And it would give them suggestions as to other things they can learn and other books they can read and other videos they can watch. And it would just know exactly where they were on their learning journey at any time. And they would be able to curate the content and the delivery and the assessment that would just work for the child. So that child from an early age, and again, goes back to the ethics of access to digital devices.
Yeah. And also what we believe as a society children could learn,
Exactly.
etc. So there's a lot of work to be done there, I'm certain. But that sense of a mentor is
just
really
a buddy, a companion, and the AI learns through the chat interface. There's this constant iterative process where the model becomes bespoke to that individual. When they go to college, it's going to give them interview techniques, how to write their personal statement. When they go into the world of work, that it's going to be constantly, it knows exactly what that person is good at, and it's constantly looking for opportunities. When you say I'm ready for my next job, it's out there and it's looking for you, and it's just constantly gathering data on the world. So I think that's, and I would imagine, I think that will happen. I don't think that's a fiction. I think AGI, artificial general intelligence, that's the obvious thing, that you've got this general intelligence which is with you and becomes like your companion, your guide. We've seen it in science fiction movies, but I think it will become a reality. If that happens, it will have to change the nature of teaching and teachers, but it will also have to change the nature of schools. So what I can see is teacher training colleges and institutions need to understand that the role of the teacher is going to have to change in the next few years. Because actually, if you know that every child has access to a device, whether it be a general intelligence or whether it simply be like ChatGPT, like a version of ChatGPT for the child, it's going to change the nature of teaching, and teachers will need to start to understand how to get the best from these large language models, these generative AIs, they're called generative AIs, how to get the best from it, and then how to support the children through their learning. And I think what I'd love to see, again, utopian vision, is actually have proper project-based learning. Like proper, we've played with it for years and we've never got it right. And the main reason we haven't got it right is because kids get stuck on something during the project and they don't know where to look. And so the learning can be very shallow and very surface with project-based learning. It generally can. It can be really fun and they can come out with really nice things at the end. But when you try and work out whether they've learned stuff, often they don't learn that much. Now, if they've got AI, they can actually use the AI to give them the information they need exactly when they need it, so they can then really deepen their learning through projects. So I'd love to see multidisciplinary, real-world, meaty, really immersive projects supported with artificial intelligence. That's the case. Schools themselves need to change. Okay. If you think about the school classroom, the reason the school classroom is created in the way it's created is because it's there to support the delivery model of one to many. Okay? We have a one-to-many delivery model, many kids in the class. Turn that on its head, all of a sudden you have the student at the center surrounded by many different kind of modes of learning and support. Suddenly changes. You don't need to have a school with lots and lots of classrooms. We looked at it in the early 21st century, the end of the 20th, begin with building schools for the future. We weren't ready for that. No. We weren't ready for however forward-thinking the Blair government was. We simply, as teachers, were not ready for these big plaza learning schools. We weren't prepared. Now we can start to look at it again, but rather than having big plaza learning, which I never particularly liked anyway, is we have different learning zones in a school building, and you'll have zones where they could be doing one-to-one small groups, where they can be having some lectures. Maybe they can be looking at an online lecture from a school in a different part of the world. You know, you have virtual reality and augmented reality areas of the school. You can have proper outdoor learning. You can bring parents in. Why we, you know, if the role of the teacher no longer becomes that who has to be like the holder of the knowledge, and let's bring parents in, and let's bring the community in.
The community, wider than parents, yes,
because
definitely.
if you're doing real world projects,
yes,
like proper real world projects, let's bring the experts in. They can support these real world projects. So I think that's the way I see education going in the next sort of 5 to 10 years. But the pace of change is so fast. You know, AIs now so if you think about the way in which we've had technology developing since Moore's law, which was I think 1950s. You know, Moore's law, which is the rate of change and the cost and the speed doubles every 2 years and halves every 2 years. It's something like that. That Moore's law no longer applies.
No, it doesn't. No.
Because now it's no longer to do with the human interface with this technology. The AIs are teaching themselves. And so actually Moore's law will disappear, and we're now going to have an exponential rate of accelerated growth. But we have to at least try and keep up. So I think the idea of the school and the teacher is a debate that we need to be having right now. We can't wait for 1 or 2 years until let's just see how it goes with AI. Is it going to take off? No, it is. That ship has sailed. You know, that's now we're now in this world.
Yes.
So I think the reason, you know, talking to you and that anyone who listen is because I think unless we do this immediately, we're just going to be left behind. We'll just be educators once again. You know, we're stuck in our staff room and we're just kind of pipe and slippers type thing. Oh yeah, you know, fuddy-duddy teachers. If you look on LinkedIn, if you look at the number of educators now who are really embracing this, I mean, and they're and it's really exciting.
They're talking about it a lot. Yes,
I've never seen this before. I certainly didn't see it with tablet devices or handheld. I didn't see this degree of excitement because anyone who kind of is passionate and understands how these things are going, they're suddenly thinking, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for. And now they're embracing it and they're trying it in their classes. And the only barrier, you mentioned one other thing about sort of what might be some of the barriers to us adopting this right now. Since biggest barrier is the fact that we just have commercial proprietary, you know, ChatGPT. It's just an interface. It's got nothing to do. It's not school focused. It's not protected. It's not. It's not monitored. It's, you know, DALL-E, Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, the generative text to image processors. They're not monitored. They're out there.
They're not protecting children. They're not regulated.
So, you know, there are GDPR issues with children in the UK. We have slightly less. You know, we're still very mindful of safeguarding, but we have legally in Tunisia where we can be a little bit freer based on our policies, where we can be a tiny bit freer than in the UK. So I think we're going to have to look at all of these, all of this now. And I'm sure policymakers, they're all thinking, oh my goodness, you know, GDPR in the age of AI, how does that work?
Or why don't we ask ChatGPT to tell us?
It'd be interesting to see what it. So that I think that the main barrier to entry right now is something as simple as, if I'm a teacher and I'm in the classroom, how do I get them to sign on? Do they all need to have their own ChatGPT account? Can I have one for the whole class? You know, if I'm downloading Discord onto the laptops because they're going to access Midjourney, how does that work? How do we protect? So and I think that's probably the thing that teachers are most scared of at the moment. They're just thinking, I'd love to, but I just don't know where to start, which is one of the reasons why in the school at the moment, we're just playing, we're just thinking, well, let's try this. Well, what was the problem? What was the barrier? Okay, how can we get around it? But there will be very, very soon, probably in the next 6 to 12 months, there will be solutions which will come onto the market, which will have ChatGPT underneath.
Yes, but we'll have those layers of appropriate.
Which will be a single sign-on, which will link to your school sign-on, so it has that group, so that they will give children the access to what they need with an interface which is safe. So I think that's good, and that will happen quite soon.
Well, on that note, which is very exciting, I think we should draw this to a close. Thank you so much, Darren, for giving up your time, have a chat, and then I'm sure that it will open up the discussion and lots of people will want to chat with you. So
Fantastic.
thank you very much indeed, and look forward to the
Thanks.
next time we talk.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. That's great. Thanks.